I'm one of your 4 co-facilitators for today's workshop. So I'll just let the others very briefly just introduce themselves and give you a quick wave so that you know who they are. John, do you want to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm John Sweeney. I'm based in Kazakhstan, but currently riding out the storm in Belarus, as it were. Very nice to meet everyone.
Jose.
Hi everyone, Jose Ramos. I'm based here in central Victoria near Melbourne, Australia. Good to be here.
And Laurie.
Hello, I'm Laurie Smith. I'm a researcher at Nesta, based here in London.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have a very global facilitation team today. And we'll be asking you to very briefly introduce yourselves as well when we get into our breakout groups to actually start playing. So in this workshop, hopefully you will have read the description, but we will be playing a game this morning. And the game is designed to help you imagine entirely new ways of involving people in thinking about the future. Next, John, thank you. So the game that we're playing is based on a report that we published back in November last year, which is also called Our Futures. And the report sets out why it's important to involve more people in shaping the future and why doing that will help us actually make better decisions in the present. The report provides an overview of what we call participatory futures approaches. Okay, so put very simply, these are a very diverse range of different methods for involving large numbers of people in thinking about and shaping the futures that they want. And we're going to share 3 very quick case studies just to illustrate the type of thing that we're talking about. So this first example is called Early Days of a Better Nation. It's a piece of immersive and interactive theatre that transported the participants to a collapsed state and then tasked them with rebuilding the state anew. So it gave this temporary community the chance to really explore questions around values, purpose, and meaning. The next example is called Moral Machine. And it's an example of how you can use online games, crowdsourcing or crowd sensing in participatory futures approaches. Moral Machine is an online game. It presents players with a series of moral dilemmas in which a self-driving car has to choose between the lesser of 2 evils. So should the car kill 2 pedestrians, or should the car let all 5 passengers die? So nearly 40 million people from over 200 countries have played this. And it's really highlighted, I think, that there are some very different cultural values. And it's an interesting way of showing how participatory futures approaches can be used to draw out the values that different communities want to underpin their futures and to also underpin their emerging technologies. Then the third example is from Sweden. It's called Carbon Ruins. And it's an example of how participatory futures can involve a technique called speculative design, which involves creating objects from fictional futures. So this exhibition set in 2053, and it uses a series of objects to tell an imagined story about how Sweden achieved net zero. And by interacting with these objects, the people who come to the exhibition have the chance to consider different and viable pathways to achieving a desired or a preferred vision. So while the report that I mentioned at the start sets out really the state of the participatory futures field at present, we actually want to encourage much more innovation within this field. And we are particularly keen to encourage more innovation in the use of emerging technology to really democratize futures thinking, to make it something that all of us do much more regularly, and to encourage much more social imagination about the types of futures that could be possible. So now I'm going to hand to John, who is going to introduce us to the game with a short film.
Okay, and hopefully our technology will cooperate. So here we go. Okay, let's try it again. Here we go. Okay, that was a little wonky, but I think you got the idea. My wife realized that the silent disco was broken and ran down to see what was going on. So now we're going to look at a specific example that we actually talked about in the game as well. So I'm gonna toss it to Jose. So Jose, can you walk us through this extraordinary participatory futures example? Oh, and you're on mute.
Thanks for reminding me. Yeah. So when we began looking at the future of participatory futures, and we began thinking about, oh, well, how might technology interact with all these other important elements, the challenges that we're facing, and how we might use futures thinking. One of the things that emerged was, well, there's so many different combinations. We played around with a couple of combinations as a team, and this combination emerged. This idea of an interspecies council of the future. So if you can just go to the next slide, John. So we were playing around with ideas, and we thought, okay, artificial intelligence is a pretty strong trend. And one of the big challenges that we have is biodiversity loss. Some people say we're living through a sixth great extinction in our evolutionary timeline. And we began thinking about, okay, well, what kind of participatory futures approaches might we take? And here, what's highlighted is deliberate. And so the idea here is that that with the maturation of artificial intelligence as a technology, we are going to be able to use the data that we have of different species. We're going to be able to use the data and our understanding of how that species live, their different niche environments, and even postulate the perspective that those species might have. And we're going to be able to create artificial intelligences that will be able to represent the species and speak and advocate for themselves. So, you saw that picture of the Arctic fox. It's an endangered species. That Arctic fox will be represented by an artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence will use our aggregated knowledge of that species' challenges. And it will use narrative computation to help it tell stories about itself. And we'll be able to bring it into different decision-making environments. Let's say a local council is making a decision about a particular development project, or they'll be, within a national council thinking about planning decisions. And instead of having those species represented by humans, they'll be represented by an artificial intelligence that will strongly advocate for their own future. And so the idea here is really, the core concept behind this is that the future is really asking us to be different, to do different. We're not going to be able to solve our challenges with the same thinking and methods. And so this game is a way of playfully exploring this question critical to, our futures and survival. So yeah, I hope that illustrates that point.